Hello,
Yes,
please confirm if you can hear me.
yes.
Good evening. Good evening, Promise. Good evening, Mugala. How was our day? So sorry for starting the class late. Sorry, people didn't join. You guys didn't join on time. So let's just get right into it. So today we are going to be talking about. Sorry. All right. So today we are going to be talking about fundamentals of layout in UI design. But before I start, did anyone do anything during this weekend? Maybe try to design something, maybe a hero section, or the things we've done in the past. Maybe just try to replicate also. Has anyone tried to do that? Please indicate if you have. So nobody did anything during the week. During the week. Okay. So let's just get right into it. Please, are you guys here? Promise, are you here? Promise, are you here? Mujola, are you here?
Yes.
All right. So let me share my screen. All right. So can you guys see my screen? Can you
Yes.
guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right. All right. So like I said, we're talking on fundamental of layout in UI design. That is just how we structure, how we organize, and how we organize our interface. How we structure it, like how the structure looks like. So that's what fundamental of layouts means. So now, getting right to it, layouts is the structure that supports the visual components of an interface. That is, it is how we work with our alignment, how we work with our spacing, how we work with the way we group our elements, the way we group them, the way we place them in our interface. So basically, that's what this course is all about. Then, for us to in a design, your spacing should not be too much and it should not be too less, in the sense that if you don't have much spacing, the design is going to be jam-packed, it's going to look jam-packed, and if you have too much spacing, it's going to look scattered. So basically you have to have a spacing that is not too much and space that is not too less. And also based on alignments, you have to make sure that your elements, the alignment that you started from the header should be the one you continue with till the footer. So that's basically what we mean. And to use these alignments, I said it when we started designing or doing our practical sections, that we have to use our grid so that we know how to place our elements, or how to where to place our elements and where to not place our elements. And also designing, there are some points that we have to group elements together. That is grouping similar elements. If there's element that has similar information that look alike, grouping them together. That is what grouping means. So basically, this what we're going to talk about today is how we are going to like structure our design, how we are going to make it look nice for for the users. And you know, these layouts, they are always invisible to the users, but we as a designer, you know, the users does not, they don't see your grid, but you are the one that's, you know, you are working with it. They don't see how you place your image, they don't even know where you're starting from or where you're ending. But you as a designer, that is what you have to do, because so as to give your users a nice or fish and attractive interface. So like we said, it works opening the parts where the site can shift to group rank, can make sense of the information, and also helps to helps the content to highlight what is most important data on the site. And like I said earlier, layout function is invisible to the user, but it is relevant for navigation. For us as a UI designer, you have to make use of these principles of layouts. You have to make use of them. And everything that we are doing, you know, at the end, we want to enhance the user experience in in a positive way, not in a negative way. So a well applied spacing helps to focus in content, it reduces distractions and improves space scannability, and also devise the categories and give logical meanings to users mental process. You know, in our landing page, when we were designing, I told you that we have different sections in our landing page. We have the header section, we have the hero section, we have features, services, footer, contact us, testimonial, and the rest. So grouping all these things together and placing them in a well-structured way on your interface, it makes the design look, it divides the categories, that is the sections, it divides the sections, and it makes it look appealing, visually appealing, and well structured, well defined. So basically that is what the layouts means. So we're going to be looking at some of the principles that we apply when, you know, some of the things that we use when we want to design and when we want to structure our design our interface. So the first one we're going to be talking about is size. Based on hierarchy, you know, when I was during the landing page section, I said we on the hero section we have the headline, which is always big and like a summary of what the interface is about. We have the subheading, we have the call to action button and all. So the size is like a very important principle that applies to hierarchy. And what hierarchy means is placing elements in order of their importance. That is what you want the user to see first before going to the next, to the other informations. So size is the clearest way to inform the user what is important in a site. That is why the homepage layouts usually have hierarchical blocks of information. You know, majorly even in normal writing, you know, in a book, normally if you want to write, you have a topic. Sometimes you will have a subtopic before you have the body. So, and you know that the subtopic we talk about what, and the topic we talk about what the body is all about, and the subtopic will like give you another like more information or more hints on what the body is about. So that is also applicable to design. That is when you are designing, you make what is more important, you make it bigger, like their size, you make it bigger than the rest. So that's what I mean by hierarchy. Then we can look at this image here. This image here, looking at it, you can see the first thing that our eyes might go to is the image, and that is another part of hierarchy. We are still going to get a course where we discuss of hierarchy is the image. Then the next thing we have eyes will go to is the fate of the news in the age of COVID-19, and why did that particular text catch our attention is because of the size. It's because of the size. So now looking at this text, this sentence, it's already give you what you should expect in the magazine, what you should expect in magazine. Then after that, you can start looking at the subtopic, then looking at other headlines like the meaning of Donald Trump, coronavirus quackery. Then you can go to the news and caliber and news and culture and all. So that's what I mean by size. That is when you have something important that you want the user to see first, you make the size bigger than the other text. So the next one is visual journey. Visual journey is like being aware of, be aware of this visual journey gives you the power to manipulate it. So in this visual journey, in this visual journey, it's just basically saying that whatever whatever elements you're adding in your design, you have to make sure that it doesn't lack clarity, in the sense that it is very, very clear, it is understandable, it is clear to your users. So basically, that's what visual journey looks like. That is when you are seeing your design, when the user is seeing your interface from the header to the hero section to the features to the services, it has to be clear. It has to be clear. Whatever English you're using has to be clear. Whatever image you're using has to speak about what, has to relate to what the website is about. The button, the call to action button you're using, the write up, the text on the call to action button has to be clear. So that is what the visual journey means. That is when when your user is interacting with your design, with your interface, the user will not be confused about too many informations. You give them what they want. You give them like a minimal information, but it should consist what they should know. So that is that. And this is divided into three processes. The first one is you get to know the information. That is when you want to build an interface, you have to know what it's about. You cannot start saying you want to build an e-learning platform without knowing what it's about, without knowing the company's goal. Maybe it's a company project, without knowing the company's goals and mission. You maybe, for example, maybe they can maybe the website is just for passing across information, or there will be like another a section or a feature where they have to perform a particular action. So there are different ways by which we design a website. It can be just for information, just to let people know about um their products, and it can be in a way that the users can perform an action on it. Or let's say like a hospital website, it may be like, okay, the user can book appointments, the user can consult or book an appointment to consultants, speak with their consultants. It might be like that. Or the website can just be for information, just to let people know that they have this kind of services, they have this kind of department. And also, when you want to start designing an interface, you have to make sure that you understand the concepts of what you're trying to do. Then the second one is diagram the context. That is, you section them based on your research or on what you know. You section them in a way that it will be explanatory to the user. Then the fourth one is that you verify the visual journey time to time. That is the iteration. That is iteration. That is going back to your design to iterate on it. And based on usability testing, you keep on iterating on it. So the third one is spacing. Like I said earlier, when you have less spacing and you have too much spacing, that means it's going to make your design look whack. So spacing is just, it means the empty spaces in between your elements, or in between your elements or around your elements, unused spaces between your elements or around your elements. So correct spacing defines the layout. Basically, I can say that spacing will define how your interface will look like. That is just it. It will define how it's going to look like. If it's going to look scattered, if it's going to look disorganized, spacing will determine that. So this is one of like the important principle that you have to apply when you want to start designing your interface. So since the layout is showed by the spacing between elements or negative space, that is spacing in between around the elements, its form depends on how much some elements are closer than others. Now, these spaces contain the composition and connect or disconnect the elements in such a way that associations are created between them. You know, for example, now you have your hero section, and within your hero section and your feature section, the spacing is just less. So there's no how the user will be able to indicate or differentiate the hero section from the feature section. That is, when we're talking about grouping elements that have similar informations together, grouping them together, that's what I mean by some elements are closer than others, than others. But even though they are in a screen, they are still in an interface. They are different from each other. The header is different from the hero section. The elements in the header, they're different from the hero section. The informations in the hero sections are different from the service section. So you have to make sure that you are grouping all these informations together, and
Right
add
now, can
correct
you
space.
repeat what you said earlier?
Sorry, you said what?
Can you repeat what you said earlier? You
About
said you said hero can be separated from something like that. The network was
Okay, what I'm
breaking.
trying to say. All right, can you hear me better now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Jesus. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so what I was trying to say is that in our design, we have the header section, we have the hero section, we have the services based on your context. You have the context, you have the services, you can have the about us section, you can have the testimonial section, the footer section, the contact us section, and all. So what I'm saying is that the spacing in between these sections, they have to be like a correct spacing. It must distinguish that they are separate sections. That's what I'm trying to say. Like it must not be too close together. Even though there will be header, because when you are doing all these sections, except for hero section where you will not write hero section, there are some all the other sections except the footer as well, they will have headers. Like when you want to do about us section, there will be like a about us, or needs to be able to know the particular section here. Then for services, there will be like services section as well. Testimonial, okay, what other clients are saying about us. So what I'm saying is that the spacing, there must be enough spacing between all these sections, and the spacing in between them, it has to be different from the one within your section. So for your section, you are grouping all everything in your sections. They have similar informations, so you are grouping them together. For the about us, you can have the about us, you can have the write up, you can have an image in your about us section, but make sure that you notice that they have the same, like the similar information. So that's why you group them together to name it about us section. So what I'm saying now is that between all these sections, they have to have like a proper spacing in between them. That is what I was trying to say. So do you get that now?
Okay, ma'am.
All right,
Okay, ma'am.
thank you. Okay, so that's about spacing. Now, we should also bear in mind that the distance between one element and another must be a reflection of what the user has in mind as related and unrelated, and also isolate a group of elements gives more legibility and importance. That's what I was saying about the spacing between the elements. So now let's look at this diagram. We have a diagram here. So looking at this diagram, you notice that for the illustration here, can you guys see my cursor? The way my cursor is moving.
Yes.
All right. So for the illustration here, you will notice that the write up under the illustration still like depicts what is about. Like for under on the illustrations, we have a padlock, we have a lock that is opened, which depicts that okay, you are trying to unlock something. And now looking at the right top, you see that it is similar to the illustration. Unlock everything, access all tracks, courses, projects, and exercises. So you can see that it is similar. Now, okay, now notice that between this unlock everything and access to all track, the spacing in between it is different from the spacing between this illustration and this write-up. It is different. So, this unlock everything and access to all track, they mean like the same thing. So you group that together. Then you now further you group the illustrations together with it. So that means that this illustration and the write-ups, they mean the same thing. Now, moving further, you see that this from this card, this subscription card and the CTA button, the spacing between each of them is different. From this section here, this and this CTA button, it's different. The three, they are different. And now you notice that the spacing, the subscription card and the CTA button, they are kind of close. They are kind of close. And this depicts that for the CTA button to work, it is actually the same information. Now, for the CTA button to work, you have to make sure that you are clicking on a card. If you don't click on any card, the CTA button will not work. So that means that the CTA button is working with the cards. Do you get what I'm trying to say now? Do you get
Yes.
that concept? Okay. So that means that the CTA button and these cards, they work hand in hand. So they have to like be grouped together. You have to see them as an entity, as a group. Now, that means you have like two groups here now. You have this unlock everything, the illustration, they are like similar informations, they are grouped together, and you have the card and the CTA button. You will see that the spacing now, there's now enough spacing between these two, between this group and this group, to be able to depict that this group, they are like different group. They don't mean the same, even though they still like they are still behind the same context, but they don't have similar information. Are you trying to get what I'm trying to say? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Mm, yes.
Yeah, so that is basically what I've been explaining. That is what it means. So now going further, we have the break, the principle of break. So now this break is majorly trying to like tweak a pattern that you started with. For example, maybe there's a way you've been um putting like arranging your elements. There's a way you've been arranging it. Then in between it, you just decide to like add a small tweak in between it. But though even though you are changing it, it does not affect the overall structure of that element. Let's say that you are designing a card. You're designing a card, a UI card. Now there's a way you've been doing it, consistency, there's a way you've been doing it, but in a way you just try to like tweak it a bit. But even though you are trying to like change some what should I say now, some designs in that card, if though you are trying to change it, it does not mean that it's going to affect the whole structure of the ones you've been doing before. So that is basically what break means. That is, the repetition of the forms tend to condition the mind. So the change of scheme always attracts the attention, always attracts the attention of the user. Please, am I still with you?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
All right. So that is what it means, that maybe you are trying to like come up with, you are designing something in a way, but you decide to just change it in like another way, and you continue with the former way. But by the time the way everything looks like is not going to affect the overall structure of what you did. So we can see an example here. Now, looking at these images, you can see that the size of the cards for this first card is the same. This first image, rather, is the same thing with this. But when you get to this particular place, you decide to like tweak it a bit by reducing both the height and the width. You can see for this, you reduce both the height and the width, and you now continue with the former height and width that you'll be coming up with. So looking at this now, you can see that even though there's a change in between, but it does not affect the overall structure of how the entire image looks like. So that's what we mean by break. Do you get that? Do you get that, or should I come again? Right. Okay. So as I was saying, welcome back. So as I was saying that when you're designing you're arranging a car elements in a way that you have a way an old way, but even though you're trying to tweak it, it's still maintaining the structure of the overall elements. So that's what I'm trying to say with break. Sorry, do you have any question concerning this break?
Please, can you recap a bit?
Saying about break is that in a situation whereas you have like a way you're designing an element, for example this image, looking at this first image, it has it has like a width and a height. The second one too has the same width and height. But when it got to this particular images here, you have like two images, but and they reduced in both width and height. With that, when they continue, the designer continued with former the former width and height. So but even though he tried to like tweak it a bit or change the pattern he has been coming with, even though he changed it a bit here, it still doesn't, it didn't like change the overall structure of how it looks like. Looking at it, it still look more balanced. It looks balanced, it looks very nice. So that's what I'm trying to say here, that you can in a way tweak your elements, your designs, maybe from the patterns you've been trying to use, even though they will still maintain the consistency, you can in a way tweak it, but you make sure that whatever changes you are making will not affect how the elements looks like generally. The structure of the elements, it will not affect it. So that is what break means. That says in between your designs, you can like change a bit, just add some little changes in between, but it doesn't affect the way the structure looks like, the overall structure. So that is what break means. Now the next thing we are going to move to is superposition. Yeah, superposition. So for superposition, this superposition means placing an element on another element, placing one element on another element. And in designs we have different elements. We have the imageries, we have the text, we have the CTAs, the buttons, we have the videos, icons, and all. So superposition means when you place one element on another element. For example, placing an icon on an image, or placing text on an image, or placing CTA buttons on an image. So that is what I mean by superpositioning. And when you are trying to apply this principle, you make sure that the elements you're placing on the two elements, they are not fighting for visibility. They are not against each other. They are not fighting for visibility. So using the superposition in UI design creates in user the perception that there's a real stage on the screen. So the use of different layers shows that the design continues extending into space, which not only feels more realistic and absorbing, but also more interesting. So, and also the most important rule when overlapping text is that there should be enough contrast to the background to avoid readability problems. To avoid readability problems. That's what I mean by they should not be fighting with visibility. They have to be visible. So now looking at this text, you can see that we have an image on a we have a text on an image. We have a text on an image, and you can see that even though it's still fighting, the contrast is not too okay. But I can tell you that this is like the best, this is like the color they can use, because when you are adding colors, when you're trying to do this thing, you have to make sure that the color you are using is not against the background color. So I tried doing this thing normally. I tried doing it. Like I added black, it was worse. I added other colors, it was worse. I noticed that white is like the best color to use, that to make it more visible. It's more visible than the others. So you can see this like an example of superposition. That is where we have a typography on an imagery, typography elements and imagery elements. That's what we mean by superposition. Then the fifth one is grid. The fifth one is grid. So please give me a few minutes. All right, so sorry about that. So the next one is grid. The next one is grid. You know, this grid, I'm sure we are already familiar with the use of grid. And what does grid do? What does grid do in our element? That is helping with alignments, that is creating a proportional distribution and consistency on your design interface. So designing with the correct spacing is like a real challenge, but with the use of grid, you maintain consistency on your design based on the way you align your elements, the way you place your elements. It will give it like a precise proportion, which will make your elements looks more structured and organized. So there's an image here that's make use of. Okay, and we also know in grid that when you are designing for a mobile, we use columns for our grid. We use columns for grid when you're designing in mobiles and also in um web desktop, that is website view, and in tablet views. We have different grid settings for that, which I've mentioned during the our practical hands-on. So now looking at this image, you can see that this particular image, it's worked with this designer used grid. This particular image, you notice that the designer used grid. It is well structured, well organized. Now, from the space between here and here is the same thing with the space between here and here. And looking at the space where this arrow started, this icon started down, you can see that they still maintain the same alignments. They are consistent. They maintain the same alignment. That is the space between this and this is the same with the space between this and this, and same thing with this and this. So that's about like the margin and padding rather. So it helps with alignments. It helps with alignments, and also looking at this part, you can see that this CTA, this buttons, not no, sorry, they are not buttons. This text, these write-ups, they are aligned with this body, with the body of this text. So I'm very sure that a column started from here. This is what I'm talking about. Here and here, they are well aligned. And same thing with this place, from here downwards, they are well aligned. And this can only be possible with the use of grid. It can only be possible with the use of grid. So you can see that what grid does is to make our design look more structured, looks more organized. So that is what we use grid for. So those are the major principles that we have to know, or we have to like put in place where we are trying to structure our design, trying to organize our designs. So any question on this? Any question on this?
No, ma.
All right. So with the time that we still have, let's move to, maybe we can design something. We can continue with our design, with our e-commerce design. So sorry, let me let this load. Whoa. Okay. Okay, let me just check if anyone did anything new. So if there's no, that means we just um right. So I just noticed nobody did anything new. So we are going to round up the class here. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you for coming, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Be ready for a practical section tomorrow. So good night.
Good night, ma.